Low.
Did anybody see that Iowa is about to sign a new anti-abortion bill?
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Coming to the governor to sign it here, probably today.
Yeah, I think I overheard people talking about this.
Yep.
He's the last one to sign.
No abortion after 20 weeks. I mean, it's just cutting back. It's not. It's an anti-abortion. No abortions after 20 weeks, and before you can get an abortion, there has to be a 72-hour waiting period.
I heard that part.
It's not no abortions, but it's getting better. No exceptions.
Actually want it instead of
Right.
being pushed.
And no exceptions, including rape, which I think is good too.
That's good. I agree. 100%.
Wait, what did you say?
No exceptions, including rape.
No exception.
Yeah, you can't get an
I thought
abortion.
you said there is an exception.
No,
Right. I'm
no.
like, what?
No exceptions. So, and I may have missed some other thing. I didn't get a chance to print up the article, but I think it's going to be signed today. And then also the FBI came out and said that there are now Islamic terrorists in all 50 states of the United States.
Wonderful.
So they said they're investigating terrorists in all 50 states of the United States.
Yeah, the latest one in San Francisco, where the guy killed, I think they said three white people, because he was very against white people, and he was hollering that
Allah Akbar, his
Yeah.
last two names were Ali Muhammad. Caleb?
he was hollering that, and then so the police said, well, we're just not really sure what this is.
But they don't know whether or not it was terrorism.
Right.
Yeah.
They could always, and see the thing, I mean, they try to,
What can they? I mean, how can they determine whether it's terrorism or not? To me, like it's terrorism.
Yeah,
The
they
threat
said, no, the mosque that's in that area said, oh, it wasn't a part of our mosque, and we're trying to help on this and everything. So then the police said, well, we don't know what it was.
That's the police.
which is kind of common,
Yeah.
I prefer to call them undocumented terrorists.
Yeah. Probably they're probably all here illegally anyway.
Speaking about which, London Sand, since 2001 in the city of London, 423 new mosques, 500 churches closed.
Imagine
Since
that.
2001. Let's see.
Probably
Two
sold their
examples.
churches to them.
Yeah.
The Hayat
More
United Church was bought by the Egyptian community to be converted to a mosque. St. Peter's Church has been converted to the Medina Mosque. Brick Lane Mosque was built on a former former Methodist church. Not only are buildings are being converted, but also people. The number of converts to Islam has doubled since 2001. Often they embrace radical Islam.
You're not talking about the famous St. Peter's Church, right?
Quite possibly.
St. Peter's Basilica?
Not St. Peter's Basilica. That's not in. That's not in London.
But there's the St. Peter's.
No.
Well, it just says St. Peter's
They're
Church.
like the 1600s.
Yeah, very, very likely could be.
Yeah.
By 2020, the estimated number of Muslims attending prayers will reach 683,000, while the number of Christians attending weekly mass will drop to 679,000. So there'll be actually, by 2020, estimated there'll be more people in Muslim prayers than attending weekly mass.
Imagine that.
In 2015, England's most common name was Muhammad. Huge cities in England where the Muslim population is larger. Manchester is 15.8% Muslim, and Birmingham is 21.8% Muslim, and Bradford is 24.7% Muslim. London is also full of Sharia courts. There are more than 100. There are 100 Sharia courts. There are officially 100 Sharia courts in London doing Sharia law. So that's the article. London stands how it's turning Islam away from Christianity. Here in our United States, Mississippi students give out Bibles at school before Good Friday. Students at the public high school in Mississippi handed out Bibles to their classmates on Thursday after school officials had previously prevented the Christian student group from doing so last month. On the day before Good Friday, student members of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes chapter at Stone County High School distributed Bibles to their classmates from a table in the school's lunchroom during non-instructional time Thursday. The peer-to-peer distribution comes after the FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, had previously ordered Bibles and planned to distribute them to their classmates on March 27th. The school staff postponed the group's event after a school employee questioned the legality of students being able to share the gospel with peers during school hours. In response, the Liberty Counsel, a law firm dedicated to defending religious freedom, sent a letter to Stone County Public School Superintendent Ida Owens, telling her that the First Amendment protects the rights of students to evangelize other students. According to the letter, school staff shared the memo from the website of findlaw.com regarding Bible distribution in public schools in an attempt to prove that students could only distribute Bibles by leaving them for other students to take at an unnamed table. In a letter, Liberty Council Chairman Matt Favor asserted that the memo only applies to outside organizations seeking to distribute Bibles in school and does not apply to student clubs. Regardless of any law relating to the Gideons or outside groups, either the Find a Law memo or Peck versus Upshur are applicable in the speech activities of student groups, student clubs, and individual students, Favor wrote in the letter. Students and student clubs retain their right to undertake club activities on public school campuses and may personally distribute Bibles to other willing students subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions during non-instructional time. So in Mississippi, they have the idea that as long as it's not during non-instructional time, like if you're in study hall or in lunch hour, you have the right to distribute Bibles. Students have the right. Other organizations would have to.
I'm surprised they're doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's I know.
I have a grievance with public schools.
I know.
That could be a thorn in their
side. Go to a
side.
school that was public that has strong Christian presence. Not as good as going to Christian school, but anyhow. The Grinch is trying to steal the Easter eggs.
Oh, the Grinch is working overtime. It comes
not
out
that,
at Easter.
Not that I'm a. We kind of celebrate Resurrection Sunday, not Easter Sunday, but this is kind of like eventually, we get to defending Santa Claus because he was a Christian, Okay, many of the top candy makers have scrubbed the word Easter from their advertising and packaging. Hershey's, M&M, Lidor, Russell Stover, Dove, Rolo, and Twix have all produced Easter-themed candy without mentioning the word in front of their candy. Cadbury was quick to point out that somewhere in the fine print in the back of their candy, they have the word Easter. Unfortunately, Cadbury's in trouble because they're an English company and they sponsored a nationwide Easter egg hunt, and they changed this year's Easter egg hunt from the Cadbury Easter egg hunt to the Cadbury egg hunt.
Well, then,
They're trying to take Easter out of it. No Easter anything.
Well, the commercials, look at the commercials though. You said that Easter Bunny, it's always on there every year since like God knows when. It's been
Yeah,
every
but now
year.
it's going to be the seasonal bunny. It won't be the Easter bunny.
Seasonal bunny.
With all these chickens trying to be
Spring bunny, yeah.
the
Whatever, it'll be something. But anyhow, now that all the candy, and I didn't realize this, but all the Easter candy, none of it has Easter on the front. Cadbury's the only one that has a little Easter in the back of the packaging.
and of course their television they can't.
And this is what somebody said here. From the Liberty Council, Matt Faber again, founder of the chairman of the Liberty Council. He said this: as Christians around the world celebrate Easter, there are believers who are being targeted by terrorists for their faith during their holy season. It is shameful that these companies are so insensitive or hostile to Christianity by censoring the reason for the season on their candy wrappers. Interesting.
Now,
Interesting. Okay, and this is just kind of a case against Christ, a case for Christ.
Oh,
Christ.
good.
A case for the case for Christ.
The movie?
Yeah. What?
I wanted to see that.
Yeah, I did too.
oh,
The movie.
It's funny,
it's not just a book.
no, they made it a movie, so I got it.
Where? Yeah,
Oh.
the Davenport Theaters.
I didn't know about this. Something like it.
Lee Strobel was he was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune, I think it was. Yeah, Chicago Tribune,
Yeah.
and his wife, he's a
What?
He was a blazing atheist.
he was a blazing atheist. His wife was an agnostic, and one day his wife come to know Christ, and he was thinking about divorcing her because it was causing a division in their marriage. And then he started doing research, and he did research to disprove. Yeah, he did research to disprove the resurrection of Jesus. For 2 years, he did research, and he found the data powerful and persuasive toward the truth of the event. Lee Strobel realized at 2 p.m. on November 8, 1981, that in the face of historical data, it would take more faith to maintain my atheism than to simply accept the historicity of the resurrection of Jesus and to join his wife in her love for Christ. Rotten Tomatoes has rated it a 84%, which is a pretty good rating, actually. Yeah, it's a rating. They rate all movies.
That's a nice thing for it.
84%, which is actually not a bad rating. That's actually a pretty decent rating.
No, it's
And is currently the ninth most popular film in the country, of course. It doesn't open with nearly the amount of theaters, you know. There's been 500 more theaters added.
Well, they'll do better at home rental.
Yeah. So it's the ninth most, which again sounds like, well, that doesn't sound that good, but it actually is. So it's doing, I would say, pretty well. But
My sister and one of her friends and my sister's husband went to it, and I said, well, what did you guys think of it? And she said, I liked it, my friend liked it, and her husband said, you know, he did pretty well. He only fell asleep for about 10 minutes, you know. So, but he didn't have anything to say, so I'm thinking it was pretty hard hitting. You know, he's probably got something to think about now. He just doesn't really want to think about.
right.
So probably good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's First step is to admit that there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He always says, you know, I'm going to heaven. I feed the birds and the squirrels, so I'm good.
Okay, this was a little out of order, but going back to Sharia law again, there's a Sharia cop in Minnesota. Let's see, in a recent interview with the Minneapolis Star Tribune, this guy who has put together a police force of 10 people under him is enforcing Sharia law, trying to enforce Sharia law in Cedar Riverside community. Cedar Riverside. It must be a suburb of Minneapolis. It's a Somali area, and they are religious police, and they're causing quite a stir. But anyhow, they're trying to enforce Sharia law in this community in Minnesota. Kind of interesting.
So I suppose
Yeah,
any woman that's complaining about her husband beating her, they shouldn't call these guys.
No, shouldn't call those guys.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
Couple of things.
I don't know. I think
Recently,
it should be.
on top of a column is called a capitol. It's the thing that goes around it, kind of the decorative part of a column is called a capitol. They just found a capitol crown as they were digging through the rubble that was found from the Muslims bulldozing on top of the Temple Mount. So they found a capitol column, which they think is actually.
I think that the Muslims would do better to leave that mound alone before they make up history.
Yeah. So here's what they think is actually, the early church met and Jesus met in Solomon's Porch. Solomon's Porch, you've heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Solomon's Porch. Okay. Well, that's where the early church met daily, also, along with homes. They met at the temple. That's where Jesus met and ministered in Solomon's Porch. And they think that this is a capital or the top of a column from Solomon's Porch. It's Hellenistic, which is, they think was right when Jesus is, because they were remodeling the temple. Okay.
Love it.
Let's see if I can come. Let's see in here. Yeah, I don't know that it has anything. But anyhow, there were 2 rows of columns, and it's called Solomon's Porch. Let's see if I can find it. Ah, here it is. Here's something. Dr. Gabriel Barkay, the director of the Temple Mount Sifting Project, said that this is a capital in the Doric style, one of the characteristics of art in the time of the Hesperian dynasty, which is like the dynasty that was the division from Alexander the Great. This appears to be the capital of a column formed part of the eastern colonnade of the Temple Mount, which Josephus and even New Testament called Solomon's Porch. A column like this is an impressive testimony of the immensity of the structure at the Temple Mount in the Second Temple era. It fits well in with Josephus' narrative, which describes what he saw with his own eyes. So Solomon's Porch, it was big. It's where where Peter preached in the temple.
Are you talking about the day of Pentecost?
Yeah. It could hold thousands of people. Okay. And then roll.
Only bad.
And then they found a pyramid in Israel, Poland. They think it's a burial site. I think it's today. Russian envoy, foreign minister, to discuss recognition of Jerusalem as capital. Even though Russia recognized West Jerusalem as the capital, it does not mean the embassy will move from Tel Aviv. Russian ambassador to Israel, Alexander Steen, is expected to meet in the coming days with senior foreign minister officials to discuss the significance of its surprising announcement earlier this month to recognize West Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state. So they're trying to double down on this. They're trying to get Israel to take the western half while the Palestinian authorities take the eastern half, which we mentioned in last week or the week before. So they're still talking about recognizing Israel. Israel's capital. Yep, exactly. And then also, no daylight between Israel and U.S. for first time in decades, say ambassador. For the first time in years, there's no daylight between the governments of Israel and the United States. Israel ambassador to the United States told the annual APAC conference in Washington, D.C. on Sunday. For the first time in many years, perhaps even decades, there's no daylight between our two governments, which is a good thing, by the way. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee annual policy conference draws over 18,000 activists and policymakers every year. It is often seen as a benchmark of relationships between Israel and the American Jews, and hosts of the biggest names and movers in the world of Israel advocacy. President Donald Trump headlined last year's conference. This year's conference includes addresses from the Vice President Mike Pence. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will also make a speech by video from Jerusalem. Dozens of bipartisan leaders of Congress are in attendance, including Paul Ryan, Speaker Paul Ryan. So,
But there's no daylight between.
means that they're very close now. They're so close that you can't see daylight between them. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing that the United States is in a close relationship with Israel. And right after they had, I talked about this last week, but they had Passover. By the way, that lady behind the counter there, her name is Pascha. Pascha? And I said, that's Jewish. She goes, yeah. And I go, that's from Passover. And she says, yeah. I said, are you Jewish? She says, no, we're Polish. I said, okay. So how did you get that name? And she goes, my mom gave it to me. She goes, makes sense. But anyhow, her name is Pascha. Anyhow, it's Passover, or the Passover lamb. The center part of Passover.
And many Jewish
Passover
family,
Would
even though
be
she's
like a favor in a way.
Yeah, well, the Passover, of course, it all centers around the Passover lamb.
Right.
And the death angel passes over, and of course we celebrate Easter because it's the resurrection of Christ and how death now passes over us if we put our faith in the work of God.
Yeah.
Now, or in the Word of God. So in Passover, God gave them a way for the death angel to pass over them. It was the sacrifice of the Passover lamb, which is symbolizing the work of Christ at Calvary's cross. And this year, they've had Passover services at the Temple Mount for 15 years, and this year first time that they actually sacrificed an animal. We talked about last week. they actually sacrificed an animal, a Passover lamb.
Yeah.
So they're getting closer and closer to a temple. So, and fulfillment of Bible prophecy. But what the Jews are still celebrating now, or trying to work towards, all was done at the cross.
Oh, do what?
All done at the cross. What the seven feasts and everything about the temple and all about the law is all points us to Christ. Is what it does. So many different forms and fashions. So Passover was celebrated here. It's real close to Resurrection Sunday or Easter Sunday. So, I think what did I see? I think that experts, I had this, but I was going to bring it, but experts they can look at geology. I'm always fascinated by geology, and they can tell from the earthquakes that they think that the earthquake that occurred when Christ happened was on April 2nd or 3rd. So
Yeah, I've heard
so, which is real close to Passover, which didn't happen by coincidence. Jesus celebrated actually 4 Passovers in 3.5 years of ministry. So he celebrated 4 Passovers, and more than any of the other ones. So, and that wasn't a coincidence either, because he was the Passover lamb. Okay, well that's pretty much what I had. They celebrated the right after Passover is the grain offering, and so they went out in the fields right after Passover and gathered barley so that they could have the grain offering, the first fruits of the grain offering of barley. And that's pretty much it. So, I just want to say that when I was down there, I think I probably talked to everybody. So, the appearance of a bearded man in North, Central, and South America, I find fascinating because it's a Mormon's way of trying to prove the Book of Mormon true, even though there's huge discrepancies between the Book of Mormon and the Mayans, such as human sacrifice, which is not mentioned in the Book of Mormon. That's a big if right there. But anyhow, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see how amazingly the pyramids were built. It's just remarkable, and I've talked to probably everybody already. So it's so precise. You'd have to have very, very smart people. And I gotta tell you something. That area there would not necessarily be a hotbed of intellectual growth. What is a hotbed there is brush growth. I mean, it's just brush for as far as the eye can see, and thick brush, and not very pretty, and it'd really be tough to survive in that, and to be able to very little water, a lot of brush. And I know it's dry there now, but I just can't see how these Native Indians could just come up with. There has to be an outside influence.
Yeah.
And I think of course the two leading theories is the aliens, number one. They came from the sky.
Yeah, aliens.
And then the other one is that there's usually some sort of derivative from Atlantis or some superior group of people that was in the Mediterranean area, you know. And so, and I think it actually just takes us back to the Nephilim.
Weren't the Nephilim only around before Noah?
That is a very good question.
That's what
That's a very good question. That's a very good
Those
question.
couldn't have stayed through a flood.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There's some theories behind that.
I've heard several. But,
Go ahead.
one of the leading theories is that God destroyed the entire race. But you also hear things like that soldier in Afghanistan that said that he ran across a giant.
Oh, well, yeah, there was giants in the land in Israel. In Genesis 7:14. Genesis 7:14. Talking about the creatures that they took. What was in the ark. What was in the ark? Remember the difference between aliens and a superior race of people? Okay? Aliens that came from the sky and fallen angels coming down. Okay? They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after its kind, every fowl after its kind, and every bird of every sort. Now, what do you see odd about that verse? You have to look real careful.
Wild?
What?
Wild?
Every creature that creeps?
No. Well, that's a possibility too. Because if Satan can turn himself into a serpent, couldn't the Nephilim do that too?
Well, when it says every bird after its sort is every beast.
No. Here's what and you're exactly right, Brian. It's at the end. And every fowl after its kind, and every bird of every sort.
Right.
sort.
How is it kind of odd that it talks about fowls and birds also in the same category? Things that come from the air? And a fowl doesn't have to be.
Yeah, but the opposing theory to that is God was destroying the evil seed that was on the earth. He wouldn't save demonically inspired people. You know, so
Unless, you know, the surviving one was in there in Israel to try to block God's plan, but God, all-knowing, knew that only people of faith would be able to inherit the nation. So they would have to come against those giants. So the giants were not just, the giants were there to block the flow of grace. But God, all-knowing, knew that it would only take people of faith like Joshua. Because when they sent the spies over, the spies over, they saw giants in fortified cities. And the Jewish people decided that they couldn't take that because of the giants. But then Joshua, you know, had faith to be able to go in and conquer the giants. So it's just like sometimes Satan puts up ways of blocking us, but if we walk by faith and trust in God's word, we become victorious, and in the process, that gets us to put our faith and trust in God and His word. So yes, Satan put in giants in the land of Israel, but those giants could have been a way of God testing the people to make sure that they were trusting in His word rather than trusting in what they saw. And that's one interpretation. Another interpretation is people have got their eyes on Canaan, one of the sons of Noah, because these angels had descendants, and Noah's wife and Canaan, because they seem to gravitate in the land that's Canaan, where we get the Canaan land, the area of Israel. It's where we get that name from. His son seemed to be where the giants gravitated from. So, I mean, it could be in the DNA. They say, and again, there's a zillion theories. But they say that if you take the Neanderthals, I can't say that word.
Nah.
Anyhow, if you take their DNA, it has no resemblance to human DNA.
Wow.
Very small, but that's like no, because all the human DNA, no matter where you come from, is like 95% or something like that. It's only a small percentage. It's the exact opposite with the Neanderthals.
Well, there is a Neanderthal gene and it's carried through.
Yes, that's because they think that there was some intermarriage. There's some intermarriage, but if you take, and that's only the Neanderthals from 30,000 BC supposedly, and earlier. Okay, so only the early Neanderthals. It's only the earlier ones that have that strength from intermarriage. They think, but they think the older ones, they're very low resemblance to human DNA, and that is like explain that one. And none of that, but the structure of the Neanderthals are different. They're different bone structures. They have a heavier bone structure, and they're a lot more muscular than human, the human DNA. So the point of it is that as they mixed, as generations went on, they got smaller, but because of their long, big bone structure, points to the fact that originally they were bigger people. So I mean, and we're just scratching the theories. I mean, and I'm no expert on the thing, but I read, So I find that this whole the bearded man is all part of this, where this bearded man appears in like 30 cultures in North, Central, and South America. This bearded man, and Native Americans did not have beards, and they revered him as a god. He came from the sky. Quetzalcoatl. I was at the Mayan pyramids a few weeks ago, and Quetzalcoatl, Chichen Itza.
Yeah. I walked in that pyramid.
That's because you were there before 2006.
Yeah. But anyway, the interior pyramid is much more ornate
Right.
than the exterior.
Right.
Wow.
The older civilizations, even the ones that, anyway, the older civilizations were more technologically advanced. And
yeah.
I think it was Egypt. Yeah, Egypt. Those structures were there before the Egyptians were.
Right.
And that's the argument for superior knowledge coming from
Big
eternal
circle.
beings.
Well, see, the whole thing of it is it all comes back to some form of knowledge coming from some
Intelligent design.
Some sky creature, and many times in the form of a serpent. Like for instance, you know, like the Masonic Lodge, for instance, believes in sacred geometry. Why do they call it sacred geometry? You know, you look at the Masonic Lodge. When you get to the 33rd level, you realize that you're worshiping Satan. I mean, that's the God of the Masonic Lodge. When you get up to the 33rd level, it takes you that many levels to get up, where you realize that the God that they're talking about is Satan. Now, Quetzalcoatl, combination of two things, and sacred. Well, it was a serpent with wings. Wow. A cross between a serpent and a bird, something that came from the sky and something that crawled on the ground. Combination. So, I mean, when you look at Quetzalcoatl, you can easily see how it can be a diversion from the truth of God. All religions, and again, this is, I'm no authority on this. I'm an avid reader, okay? But all religions can be divided into two kinds, basically. Work and grace, okay? But all religions, I shouldn't say all religions, but most religions center around astronomy. Okay, and just as like numerology, there is a biblical numerology and there's an occultic numerology. The same thing is true with astronomy. I believe that there's a biblical astronomy and there's a non-biblical astronomy. The Bible, the Old Testament, is based around the moon.
Right, the original days of the week didn't have names. They didn't do that until about 200 AD.
Right.
They were all numbered.
Exactly.
Wow.
So
the Sabbath is not Saturday. It was a number.
So, yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is this: is that all these other religions, like we see in the Mayans, is based around the sun. S-U-N. Okay? The Old Testament's based on moons. Okay? And so right there we see that there's a difference on how you judge time. Okay? And like in Egypt, they were sun worshippers. They built pyramids. The Mayans were sun worshippers. Their calendar was based around the sun and not the moon. God gave the Hebrew people a calendar based around the moon. Okay? So, there is people, and like I say, there are people that I believe are Christians that will tell you, and it'd be fascinating to listen to what they have to say. Yeah. But there are people that can say that all the constellations in the sky speaks of God's grace. It's like the 7 Jewish feasts, the 3 in the spring, the 1 in the summer, and the 3 in the fall, all point to the message of God's grace. There's people that say the constellations say the same thing. If you go through the constellations that are in the sky, it's a message of God's grace. And what's drawn a lot of interest currently is the solar X. It starts this year, it's 2024.
Is this the
7-year period.
Is this the Planet X?
No, this is the solar X that comes across the United States, in which St. Louis is the cross point of that. Okay. And the study of the constellations in that solar X, seems to suggest that we are heading for some very troubling times in the world and in America.
That's an interesting thought, because you think of it, God spoke everything into existence. Everything has a thumbprint on it, or DNA. So everything you look at, you can find God in it.
So this is not like this. I mean, this is not studying the Word of God. The Word studying the Word of God is more important. But when you're talking to people and witnessing to people, it's important to know some of these things, because I had a choice. I went from Cozumel and I took a tour from Cozumel. I could have taken a Mormon tour from Cancun. Cancun has a bus service that is run by the Mormons.
Wonderful.
So this is a big thing for them. However, like I said, the discrepancies between what you read in the Book of Mormon and what you see at Chicken are huge.
I climbed up in the observatory at the old location because I stayed at the hotel. I stayed at a lot of different places around that between them. But I stayed in the original hotel that they used to excavate the ruins.
All right.
Wow.
And there was a path. You go right through the jungle,
Oh.
right through the old ruins. But anyway, I climbed up inside of the observatory, and I could actually see where they would sight for certain stars, so that they could tell the season.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, as I said before, the pyramid is 52 levels corresponding to the 52 weeks, 365 steps corresponding to the days. The seasons could be judged off the corners, and if you clap 10 times and right in front of the steps, not 10 feet either direction, but clap right in front of the steps, it makes the sound of the sacred bird that they worship.
Can other people hear that too, or just the person that's doing the clapping?
Oh, it echoes. It echoes. Oh, well, yeah, it echoes.
So actually,
But
you're reverberating the entire structure by doing that.
Yeah. And here's the other thing of it is, and here's the other thing is if you go to different structures with different numbers of sets of stairs and clap in front of those, you get a different bird.
Wow.
That is so cool.
Wow.
I never knew anything about that.
I mean, well, they keep coming out and do stuff all the time, but it's
They're picking
incredible.
up energies off the top of these things. It's about 6 feet wide, going thousands of feet up. Measurable.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting, and I think it all comes back to the Nephilim. I really do.
Yeah.
It comes back to the Nephilim.
So where do the red-headed giants come in that they're found all over the
Just to
place?
go there.
You know, I think that...
Or the bearded men.
Yeah, but I think that the Indian mounds over here, I think that those are giants. I think they've got giants buried in there.
Well, I got to tell you something. When we first
Yeah,
They're
all over the United States.
all over the United States. When we first came and settled this country in the 1800s, giants were a huge subject because they kept on coming upon giant bones and giant burial places.
And as soon as they rattled off that they had it, then the government would come in, and then the Smithsonian, and then all of a sudden it would disappear, and then no history.
There was,
Yeah, well, you know, the
I
government's
was-
going to hide everything.
I want to say in Ohio, there were major finds in Ohio of giant bones.
Even
But they're
more
actually all,
recently, they're still finding things.
yeah. I mean, they've found beds that are huge in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I discovered you guys.
Yeah, we're over here now.
Good. You're in my territory now.
Yeah.
I can get here.
Every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock.
Got it.
And we have an overflow area. We're not.
Eventually, this will be packed and he'll be standing up here in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Cool.
We gotta get going though.
Yeah, gotta go show them.
Yeah, something else.